Hello guys, how are you? Welcome to the lesson number 1 of the week number 10 um, of this course. I'm happy to have been able to arrive here this week. I know it's been tough job, tough work, but we're almost on the other side. I want to remind you about the missing compromises, let's say, or commitments that we have for the course, such as the report that there's like an ambulance or something. Well, I was saying the what was it? Oh, okay, here the report of the event that will be more or less for the week number 14, I guess. Or 15, we will see, but it's really close. Usually you have to go to the event presentially and take some notes and answer some questions. Well, this semester, we're going to do it by looking at some events, right? At some videos, recordings that are going to be prepared by the students of 10th semester, okay? We have also an additional interview, and we have an additional test, the final test, okay? So take all that into account. Remember that this is the week number 10, so we have only 4 more weeks, because we're going until the week number 15, and it's important that you advance in your reading, advance in some other different things, right? But well, guys, I would like to start the class as usual by sharing a poem with you. In this particular case, is going to be of utmost importance because based on this poem, we're going to do a certain part of the assignment. Okay, so this is not only for sharing, but also for a specific academic purpose. Okay, this is written by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, a really famous poet, and a really strong woman that lived in a really difficult time for women, and especially for women who were nuns, who were part of the church, as you can see. She was one of those, and this one is part of one of her redondillas. This is like this particular style of poem is called that way. And this is a poem that has originally about 65 verses. I think 65 verses or so. But I'm going to read just a couple of them. Okay, so please pay close attention because the idea is that we will use some of these in order to do something of the assignment. Okay. So it goes like this. Hombres necios que acusáis a la mujer sin razón, sin ver que sois la ocasión de lo mismo que culpáis. Si con ansia sin igual solicitáis su desdén, ¿por qué queréis que obren bien si las incitáis al mal? Combatís su resistencia y luego con gravedad decís que fue liviandad lo que hizo la diligencia. Give me a sec. I need to look for the one over here. Opinión ninguna gana, pues la que más se recata, si no os admite es ingrata, y si os admite es liviana. And the final part. ¿Cuál mayor culpa ha tenido en una pasión errada, la que cae derrogada o el que ruego decaído? ¿O cuál es más de culpar, aunque cualquiera mal haga, la que peca por la paga o el que paga por pecar? Bien, con muchas formas fundo, que lidia vuestra arrogancia, pues en promesa e instancia juntáis diablo, carne y mundo. Okay, so this is a really famous poem. As I mentioned, it's much longer. I just read some of the ones that I think that are more relevant for the activity that we're going to do. And as you can see, it deals mostly with the position that Sor Juana has about the constant criticism that women receive. So it is wrong, it is a bad thing, it is negative if women are too liberal, if they somehow do not care too much about morality, I mean traditional sense of morality, I mean, if they are too indulgent with their desires, with the things they want in any sort of space. No, normally we can think about sexuality or interpersonal relationships, romantics, if we can call it that way, romantic relationships. But it has even an ampler spectrum, no, about anything they want. So they are accused of being easy, of being somehow immoral, of being too friendly for their own good. But then if they go to the other extreme, that is like being too prudent, of being, let's say, not really friendly, being probably very secluded in themselves. So they are accused of being unfriendly, of being, of believing they are sort of better than everybody else. Let's say many men, according to Sor Juana, do their best in order to get like the favor of women, but once they have it, so they criticize for being for giving it like too soon or too easy or whatever. There's even a part in the end that is an allusion to prostitution, yes, to let's say sexual services, in which she says that okay, the person who acquires sexual services is a sinner, and the person who offers, in this case, women sexual services instead of in exchange of money, are sinners as well. All these, of course, in the tradition of the Catholic Church religion. But which of them is more of a sinner? The one who pays for it, or the ones who usually does it because it's a need, something like that, right? And then in the end, we have a general reflection about it. Okay. So it's really interesting that she was able to write all these so many years ago, and was able to capture the essence of some of the negative interactions between men and women that unfortunately sometimes still prevail in present tense, right? Well, so remember, take that into account. I will explain later on what exactly is it that you have to do with this poem. So in the last week we were talking about the narrative discourse. We talked about some generalities. We talked about the components. And in this particular part of the video, we're going to discuss the narrative superstructure. So if you can go to the slide number 93, you will see that there is some sort of graphic in there. There is somehow of a diagram, if we can call it that way, that is divided into different parts, right? So the first thing that I want to make you notice is a little bit of the conventions. So if you can see, the red parts are optional, yes? What does it mean? That sometimes narrative texts have one or more or all of these components, and sometimes they have only one or only two or none at all, okay? So if you can, if you're going to write a narrative text, so you're going to produce a narrative in orality, they might or might not contain the ones in red. Let's say that they are optional, but the other ones are essential. So if they don't have that, it means that it's not really a narrative text. It may be an amplified descriptive text, or maybe a narrative text that is incomplete, or a narrative discourse. Okay, so let's go one by one. Let's start with the first one from left to right, that says summary or prologue, right? Many books many texts or many oral stories have this part. Okay, so that may be the first one, and this happens very frequently. For example, with books that are part of a saga. So they normally start with a summary of what happened in the previous books, in the previous stories, and it's like a little condensation of whatever happened before, in characters, in story, etc. Right? Now, some other books may be standalone, maybe individual. Again, we're dealing with books, or we're dealing with discourses, whatever. But even though they require to sort of present a situation that is going to be really valuable in order to understand a story or something like that. So I think about, for example, certain books that are about historical events, right? And they have a first part in which they summarize that context. So, for example, there's a couple of books about the Nazi times, World War II. So you can have a summary of the situation that led to this conflict, and it is a summary of like events that happened before but that are not really part of the story. Okay, so that may be a summary, right? And it may be about anything that is fundamental in terms of understanding the the narration that we're about to read or listen. Then we have another possibility that is a prologue, yes? And this prologue normally is, let's say, the result of a person who has read the book, who has listened to the story, or has read the text or the group of narrations, and he or she wants to provide some information about the book and some anticipation, right? Usually good comments, right? Normally nobody hires, somebody to start talking bad things about the book in the first page, right? So normally they are either compliments for the story. Sometimes also they deal with the creative process of the book, like how does the author came with the idea, let's say how long did it take, or what was the process of idea, writing another version, editing, convincing the publisher, etc. Right? So we have these possibilities over here. Good. So that is the first part. As you can see, you can just eliminate that part and nothing would happen with the narration. It would just continue in the same way, right? Then we have an initial situation. Yes? If you see down there under the titles, or let's say the labels of each of the components, there is something that is going to indicate us like in which moment of the story this happens, right? So if you see under the summary or prologue, you're going to find a label that says moment zero, right? So it's, let's say, completely outside of the story. That is why it says moment zero. Okay, we went with the next one. There was the initial situation. Let's say that all regular stories sort of have an initial situation. Yes, that it will be like the first part of the story when they present us the characters, they introduce maybe the setting, they give different things and ideas, right? So if you think about Alice in Wonderland, well, it is this initial situation is when she's sort of playing with her sister and reading some books and exchanging some information, and then we get to know them and the place and their names and part of their personality. If we think about Little Red Riding Hood, well, it is that part when she talks to her mother and gives her her mother gives her the food for the granny, etc. Right? So this first part normally, as I mentioned before, give us some details about the participants in the story, and give us a little brush of their ideas, personalities, motivations, etc. Right? Most of the cases, as I mentioned, a story, let's say, has this component. Yes, in the traditional composition of a narration of a tale, it's beginning, middle, and ending. So this would correspond to the beginning, right? Nevertheless, as you can see over there in the red square, well, you can omit this. Of course, this would create a kind of story that is not as common, that it's a little bit experimental, that doesn't have all the orthodox components, but it's possible to have this, right? Like to jump directly into the action. As you can see, the label over here, it is before the process. Yes, normally we can understand the process as the middle of the story, the complication, the knot, or the development, something like that. Okay. Very well. So that was the second one, and that is, as I mentioned before, possible to omit. Let's go with the next one. That is the complication. Yes. So let's say this is the moment in which the story acquires some sort of necessity for resolution. Yes. So sometimes when I'm talking about complication, or when we talk about complication, it's an actual one, like a problem, like maybe an accident, a death, something like that. Yes, something really dramatic. Yeah. So again, we can mention that the main complication of Alice in Wonderland is that she falls into, let's say, an unknown world, right? So this complicates sort of the situation. No, she's wanting like to return or to somehow get out of there and be back to her place, or to her, let's say, real world, and that complicates, let's say, the situation. Then again, we have also, for example, again, Little Red Riding Hood. So this is the moment when she finds, so she meets the wolf, and he pretends to be a friend and tell her that she's supposed to go through a shortcut that is not really a shortcut because he uses the shortest way. And well, this starts like complicating the situation. Yes, it has like some sort of a problem or something like that, right? Now, without a complication, it's impossible to have a narration. Yes, you require something or some situation that the characters or the participants require to solve somehow. Yes, otherwise it's not possible to like to have a narration, right? Now, these cases that I mentioned are very explicit. Yes, they are somehow very dramatic. Like one of them is falling into an unknown world, and the other one is like being in risk of being killed, of being devoured. But don't take the complication so literally, right? Sometimes we can have narrations without a really dramatic thing. Yes. So, for example, you can have a conversation with somebody, and he may say, "Okay, so what did you do yesterday?" "Now I was in class in the university, and then I got hungry. I was hungry, so I went out for a bit and bought something in the street, and then I came back." So as you can see, there's no deaths over here, or a very present danger. You know, maybe intoxicated with the empanada that you bought, or somebody's going to steal you outside of the university, which is very common. But besides that, it seems pretty mundane. Yes, nevertheless, there was a complication over there. What is it? Getting hungry, right? So please take that into account, that the complication is not necessarily something unsurmountable or epic. In a regular narration, such as a day-to-day conversation, it may be that. Okay, as you can see, this is essential. It's mandatory to have it. Then we have the action, okay, that as you can see over there has the label that it's process, development, not, okay? So this is the essence of the story. Actually, like what is happening, yes? So this action or this process may be composed by a single action, or by a single event, or it may be a chain of different ones, right? So what would be the action, or let's say that the most important part, or the most complicated part in this case? Well, in the case of Alice in Wonderland, it is this final, let's say, part of the story in which there's this confrontation and the trial and etc. Right? It's like the most exciting, or the most somehow dramatic, or the most noticeable part of the narration. That, as I mentioned, may be one thing, or it may be more than one. And in Little Red Riding Hood, well, it would be the part when she meets with this dressed up wolf, and the wolf eats her, right? So it may be that part, the confrontation, or it would be actually the part when the wolf eats her. So as you can see, the label says process, development, or not, yes? So we were sort of being expecting this moment now. So from moment zero, before the process, starting the process. So this is actually the process, like the most important part, or the let's say the segment of the story in which more things happen. You know, there are a lot of tension, narrative tension, right? Then the story of the being hungry, well, it would be like going outside, and trying to buy something. That would be like the process. Finally, we have the resolution, and it's the end of the process. Now, normally in traditional stories, resolution is equivalent to solving the problem. We had a problem, and then we solved it. Yes. So, what is the resolution in Alice in Wonderland? She was dreaming, right? So she wakes up. So that is the way in which she solves the problem of being in an alien world, right? Then, what is the resolution of, let's say, Little Red Riding Hood? That this huntsman arrives and kills the wolf and takes Granny and Little Red Riding Hood out of his belly, right? What is the resolution in the story of I Was Hungry? Well, going for the empanada and eating it, and that's it. That is how you solve the problem. Now, my point here is that these resolutions sounds like always solving the problem, yes? And that is not true in the traditional sense, right? For example, let's imagine a different resolution for the empanada thing, yes? Imagine that you went outside, but then the police arrived that day and confiscated the whole thing and beat the crap out of these poor guys. And so by the time that the person went outside, it was empty. So he wasn't able to buy his empanada, let's say, yes? That is a resolution, yes? Like, he was trying to solve the problem. It was impossible to do it, so he was too hungry. But that is a resolution. Yes, that is how the situation resulted, or that is how the situation ended somehow. Yes. So a resolution could be that the character wanted to live and eventually died. A resolution could be that he wanted to achieve something and was impossible. Okay, so take that into account. Basically, it's the end of the process. Okay. So these three are the essential components. They are not replaceable. they must be there in order to have a narrative text and be part of a narrative discourse. Complication, action, resolution, beginning, middle, and ending. Those are the three things that we require, at least, right? Well, let's go. Well, and that's the end of the process now, as you can see in the label over there. Let's go with the other one, that it's evaluation, right? This happened after the process. And please, I'm going to explain them simultaneously, evaluation and moral, because they may be similar and they may be confusing, right? So the evaluation is done either by the author, right? So at the end of the story, let's say the author writes a foreword, for example. A foreword in which he reflects upon the story and mentions certain things, and that's it. Or it may be done through the characters, right? They discuss among themselves and have let's say an assessment of the situation, what happened, what meant for their lives, etc. Right? That's it. Nevertheless, they never mention, hey, you reader, you are supposed to do this, or this is good and this is bad, or this is something you should avoid, or this is something you should imitate. The information is there, and is the reader the one in charge of evaluating and making any sort of conclusion, okay? There is no any explicit lesson, or there is not any explicit manifestation of either the characters or the author to say, hey, this is good, this is bad, this is excellent, this shouldn't be done, etc. Right? They give you there all the elements, and you sort of decide for yourself. There is a difference with the moral. The moral basically tells you explicitly, and this happens a lot in fables, for example, that something is good or something is bad, or that a certain character got what he deserved. A lot of different things. So let's say that both of them are reflections after the end of the story, done either by the author in his real persona or by some characters. But the difference is that the first one is just suggested evaluation. You decide, you read, you probably it meant nothing to you and you don't reflect upon it, or you have some reflection about it. Or finally the moral, that is very in your face, you should be doing this, doing that, this is good, this is bad. Okay, basically that's it. So thanks a lot. That was part of the narrative superstructure. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.